Hi, so this video is based on a comment from one of the viewers on my Waves stream video. It's from Bill SR1VD, another great video. Wow, that's a nice UI and workflow. He's talking about Waves stream, by the way. But he also says that's an interesting set of plugins in your control room. That might be an interesting subject for a future video. And I think he's right about that, because my list of plugins in the Cubase control room has grown over the years. And there might be some good ideas for you in there as well. And on top of that, I'll explain some general things about plugins in the Cubase control room. So let's go! So if by now you're thinking plugins in the control room, but what is the Cubase control room actually? Then I suggest you first check out my video on the Cubase control room, so you at least know what it is and know the basics about the Cubase control room, and then come back over here to see what I have to say about the plugins in the Cubase control room. So I'll link that video over here, if you promise to come back, alright? So let's dive right into Cubase to see which plugins I have in my control room. So on the right side over here is my control room, and it's now on the main tab, and if I go to the Inserts tab, you can see that over here there are lots of plugins which I have put in the control room. Now in general, the control room is for monitoring the sound that you send to your speakers, to your headphones, or however you're trying to listen to your mix. But that also means that whatever you put in the control room is not going to be in the export of your mix. So in general, you want plugins on there which do not affect the sound of your mix. Because if you want a plugin to affect the sound of your mix, you put it on your mix bus, right? However, my first two plugins in the control room are immediately exceptions to that, so let's have a look. Because my first plugin in the control room is the Adapter Metric AB plugin. And that's basically a plugin that I use to play reference tracks. So down here at the bottom you can see some of the reference tracks that I tend to use. But that does change over time and sometimes even with the song. But the nice thing about this plugin is that I can quickly switch between reference track and my original mix with this big button over here. I can quickly match the levels of the reference track and my mix. And I can look at various aspects of my mix versus the reference tracks with all these various options that I have on top here. Now this is not a deep dive into the Metric AB plugin, because there's lots of videos about that already. If you want me to make one, let me know in the comments. But I'll give you a quick demo with a reference track, which is not actually a real reference track that I intend to use, because those are usually from commercial mixes, but if I play those, then the video will get demonetized or even blocked. And by the way, the mix that you're hearing, that's a song that I'm still producing, not finished, not mixed at all, no effects on the vocals, but just using it as an example in this video. I'm rewriting the script, I'm owning the stage, hard basic. Lost in, I feel my freedom, I'm in control. I'm unstoppable. On to the next plugin, which I made a separate video about actually, which I will link in the description. And that's Isol 8 by TB Pro Audio. And it's a utility plugin which is free, which basically allows you to quickly solo a certain frequency band and just listen to those frequencies. Also, when I switch to a reference track, I can quickly listen to just the low end of my track versus that reference track. Now I know Metric AB actually has very similar controls over here. Sub, bass, high, mid, low mid. But they're still very much like the separate big buttons on the Isol 8 or I guess Isolate plugin for this purpose. So check it out. The next one is the Span Spectrum Analyzer. Again, a free plugin, which probably all of you heard about before because it has been around for quite a while already. And well, it shows the frequency spectrum and it has a nice stereo correlation meter over here. I used to hide in the shadows, afraid to let my light shine. But now stepping into the spotlight, breaking free from my own mind. Now I'm not using it in default mode, but instead I'm using a preset from Ian Shepherd that he talked about in his mastering course. And these are the values for that preset. It basically makes the spectrum analyzer react to the music a bit more slowly so that you get more of an average spectrum instead of seeing every instantaneous change of the music in your spectrum analyzer immediately. I like it that way. Next up is the SSL meter plugin, which I got for free with my SSL UF1 controller over here. And the nice thing about this metering plugin is that it actually shows on my UF1 controller, which is a big advantage because it means I can always see this metering plugin without actually having to have it open on screen. And I typically have it set to the VU meters, but it has some other options as well. Let me show you. So I'm just filming this handheld with my iPhone. Let's play some music.
I've been through the fire, I walked through the rain, but every circle's made me stronger. It's only find my own way. I'm unstoppable, I'm a force that can't be.
Yeah, so you saw that on the controller I can quickly switch it to a spectrum analyzer as well, which reacts a bit more quickly, and a correlation and digital level meter, all without opening any plugin in my DAW on screen, which I like a lot. So it's always there basically. Next up is another VU meter, which I guess you could say is a bit superfluous now, but it's still in there because I used it before I had the SSL UF1 controller. And I typically use these VU meters to keep an eye on the general mix level, as well as to set levels when I'm, for example, recording something. So VU meters, always handy to have. The VUMT meter is a paid plugin, by the way, but it's great as well. Now, next on my control room, I have the Ulean loudness meter. And this is the pro version, but there's also a free version of this plugin. And this gives me all the loudness numbers of a mix. And the nice thing about this one is that it also shows a history of the loudness of the track. So if you play the full track, you get a complete history of how loud the song is in every section of the song. Let me show you a little bit of that.
I used to hide in the shadows, afraid to let my light shine. But now stepping into the spotlight, breaking free from my own mind. I've been through the fire.
Yeah, so you see a bit of a histogram over here with which loudness value appeared most in this part of the song. You can basically zoom in or zoom out on a certain section of the song. You can move the graph. You can set a certain reference loudness that you want to compare it to. And there are lots of loudness related numbers over here. Short term, total integrated loudness, loudness range in the audio that you played, etc. All very useful information when you're mixing or mastering a song in Cubase. Now by now, if you like this video or find it useful, please give it a big thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm. It really helps to show this video to more people. And what also helps is if you subscribe to the channel and ring the little bell icon so that you get notified when I publish another video. For even more support, please consider using the super thanks button below the video as a virtual tip jar, or using any of the affiliate links in the description to one of these stores. Because if you buy something at those stores after clicking one of those links, I'll get a small commission without any additional cost to you, which is highly appreciated. Let's move on to the next plugin which I have in the control room, and that's the True Balance plugin from Sonable, which I use to compare the overall frequency balance of my mix against some references that Sonable provides, or to some reference tracks that I imported myself. And that looks like this for this track.
I used to hide in the shadows, afraid to let my light shine. But now stepping into the spotlight, breaking free from my own mind.
Again, this song has not been mixed yet, but over here you could see that the bass is a little bit above the regular level for a pop track. So I might want to do something about that when I mix this song. And if you want to know more about this plugin, I also have a separate video about it, which I will link in the description. Now on to the next plugin, which is actually one which I typically do not have in my control room, but it's the Session Wire plugin that I was recently introduced to by Chris Salem in one of his videos. And I'm currently using it to record the audio which is going to the control room into OBS, so that you can actually hear everything that I do on the control room plugins. For example, filter the low end, filter the mids, play a reference track, etc. Because typically I only record the mix output of Cubase into OBS for these videos. But this is a bit of an exception, because what I typically have in this position is another plugin from Sonable called True Level. And that's another loudness and dynamic range related plugin, which basically shows you the numbers for loudness and dynamic range against certain set references. Let me show you what comes up for this track.
I used to hide in the shadows, afraid to let my light shine. But now stepping into the spotlight, breaking free from my own mind. I've been through the fire.
So you can see over here that the dynamic range is still a bit too big when compared to Spotify reference for pop song from 2010s and up. And the loudness over here is also not yet in the green zone. But again, it's no surprise because this track has not been mixed or mastered at all. But it's a very nice visual way to look at the loudness numbers compared to all the other tools which I already had in the control room to look at loudness. Now what you have to remember with these plugins on the control room is that the first 6 of these are pre-fader, and the fader in this case is the control room level, which you set over here. But these last 2 are post-fader. So that means that if you set this to something else than 0, it will affect the readout of these meters. And especially for the level meter, of course, that's something that you typically do not want. So that's something to keep an eye on. I have so many plugins in my control room that I only had these post-fader slots available. So I know that when I look at the output of these plugins, I have to keep the control room level at 0. But preferably plugins like these would go pre-fader so that the control room level does not affect what you're seeing. Now I have 2 more plugins in the control room that I want to show you. And that has to do with the monitoring that I've set up in the control room. Because over here you can see that I have 2 monitor pairs set up. One are my Adam monitors, which are my main monitors in the studio. And the other monitor pair is not really a monitor pair, but it's for the VSX headphones by Slate Audio that I sometimes also use when mixing and referencing. And the reason that I have it set up like this is because I have different inserts on there. So over here you can see that for my monitor A, I have the Sound ID reference plugin on there, which is basically a monitoring and room correction setup, which allows me to have somewhat calibrated monitoring in my room. Although I also have sound treatment, it helps me to get a more flat frequency response. And I have this plugin on my monitors in the control room so that it only affects the sound that I hear when I have these monitors enabled. At the same time though, if I want to listen to a mix through my Slate VSX headphones, there is another plugin for that, which is set up on my second monitoring pair, pair B over here. You can see that I have the VSX plugin from Slate on there. And this one basically allows me to listen to a mix through these various rooms here that the plugin models. I can even listen to modeled AirPods, for example, or some more famous headphones, or some famous mix rooms. I still like the Archon Studio the best at the moment. But when I put on these headphones, I basically select monitor B in my control room, which disables the Sound ID reference compensation for my room and Adam speakers. And it enables the VSX plugin, which simulates all these rooms so that I can listen to my mix in a lot of different ways. Now there's one particular thing that you need to set up in Cubase, because the actual outputs that are going to my Adam monitors are actually the same outputs that are connected to the Slate VSX headphones. So for that to work, I have set up the following audio connections in the control room. Over here you can see that I have the Adams monitors here, and they are connected to output 1 and 2 of my RME audio interface. And the VSX headphones are also connected to output 1 and 2. Actually, output 1 and 2 of my audio interface are going to a hardware monitoring controller, to which I have connected the Adams monitors as well as the Slate VSX headphone. But this does not work out of the box when you install Cubase, because usually Cubase prevents you from using the same device ports to different monitoring pairs. It will typically refuse to do that. And to make sure that you can set it up like I just showed you, you can go to Edit, Preferences, and then go to VST Control Room. And you need to untick this option, Exclusive Device Ports for Monitor Channels. By default, this is enabled. I have disabled it so that I can use different monitor channels in the control room. In my case, for VSX and the Adam monitors, but still use the same physical outputs on my audio interface. Yeah, so those are the plugins that I'm using in the control room. But let us know in the comments which plugins you are using in the control room so that we can all learn from that. And maybe you have some nice tips for all of us. Now, if you like these deep dives into Cubase functionality, I have a lot of videos about Cubase, which I have all linked in this playlist. Check it out, enjoy, and see you soon.